Welcome to this video. Have you ever felt a subtle disconnect? A quiet friction between the face you show the world and the person you feel yourself to be deep inside? It's like wearing a costume you didn't consciously choose. One tailored by unspoken expectations, social pressures, and the relentless desire for acceptance. This feeling, this sense of performing a role rather than living a life, seems to whisper through the corridors of modern existence. We find ourselves navigating an era often celebrated for its interconnectedness, yet paradoxically marked by an overwhelming pressure towards conformity. The digital square, the global marketplace, the corporate hierarchy, even our most intimate circles often seem to favor a certain sameness, rewarding those who fit neatly into predefined molds, while subtly marginalizing those who deviate. We are encouraged, nudged, sometimes implicitly coerced into cultivating a personal brand, presenting a polished narrative, smoothing over our quirks, aligning ourselves with prevailing trends. But beneath this polished veneer, a fundamental human yearning persists, a deep-seated desire for something more genuine, something real. We long for authenticity, the state of being true to ourselves, living in alignment with our core values, expressing our unique perspectives, and embracing our unvarnished experiences. But what does authenticity truly signify in a world saturated with performance, curated images, and algorithmic influence? Is it a naive ideal, a forgotten luxury, or is it something essential to our very humanity, a quality worth striving for, perhaps even fighting for, against the homogenizing tide? In this exploration today, we will journey into the heart of this profound tension. We will examine the powerful forces that propel us towards conformity, attempt to grasp the complex meaning of authenticity beyond its often superficial usage, and consider why this struggle is not merely a personal dilemma, but a matter of critical importance for our individual fulfillment and our collective future. Why does it so often feel like we are auditioning for our own lives? The pressure to conform is rarely a singular, overt command. It manifests more often as a pervasive atmosphere, a constellation of subtle cues, unspoken rules, and internalized expectations. Consider the digital landscapes we inhabit daily. Social media platforms, ostensibly designed for connection and community, frequently function as vast arenas for social comparison, status anxiety, and meticulous impression management. We scroll through endless feeds, showcasing carefully selected moments of success, happiness, and aesthetic perfection, creating implicit benchmarks against which we inevitably measure our own often messy and complex realities. This constant exposure can easily trigger feelings of inadequacy, envy, and a compelling urge to project a similarly idealized image of ourselves. The very architecture of these platforms, with their emphasis on likes, shares, follower counts, and engagement metrics, translates social approval into quantifiable data points, subtly conditioning us to optimize our self-presentation for external validation, rather than prioritizing genuine self-expression. We learn, often unconsciously, to perform versions of ourselves that garner positive feedback, smoothing over vulnerabilities, amplifying achievements, and conforming to the prevailing aesthetics and opinions within our online bubbles. The algorithms that curate our feeds further reinforce this dynamic, often trapping us in echo chambers that limit our exposure to diverse perspectives, challenge our assumptions less frequently, and subtly shape our perceptions of what is normal, desirable, or acceptable. Beyond the glowing screens, consumer culture plays a monumental role in shaping our desires, aspirations, and even our sense of identity. Advertising relentlessly bombards us with messages suggesting that fulfillment, belonging, and self-worth can be purchased through the acquisition of the right products, the adoption of the right lifestyle, or the attainment of the right look. Trends cycle with increasing speed, dictating not just what we should wear or own, but how we should aspire to live, love, and find meaning. We are encouraged to construct a personal brand, a marketable identity package characterized by consistency, appeal, and alignment with prevailing consumer ideals. This pervasive commodification of the self risks turning authenticity into just another product to be consumed or performed, rather than an intrinsic quality of being. The pursuit of the perfect wedding, the Instagrammable vacation, the appropriately trendy home decor, the latest technological gadget often carries the weight of social signaling, of fitting into a particular aspirational mold, rather than reflecting purely personal preferences or values. The professional world presents another powerful arena where conformity often holds significant sway. Workplace cultures frequently demand adherence to specific norms of behavior, communication styles, emotional expression, often requiring emotional labor, and alignment with corporate values and objectives. While a certain degree of shared understanding and decorum is necessary for collaboration and organizational function, this pressure can easily tip you to suppressing individuality, discouraging constructive dissent, penalizing diverse thinking styles, and demanding a level of personal sacrifice that leads to chronic stress, disengagement, and burnout. The pervasive narrative of the ideal worker, often characterized by unwavering commitment, constant availability, and a singular focus on career advancement, can implicitly disadvantage those with different life circumstances, priorities, caregiving responsibilities, or working styles that deviate from the norm. Voicing unconventional ideas, challenging established processes, admitting uncertainty, or even exhibiting a personality that does not neatly fit the expected professional mold can feel risky, potentially jeopardizing promotions, relationships with colleagues, or even job security. This pressure often leads individuals to adopt a distinct work persona, a carefully managed version of themselves that feels disconnected from their life outside the office, contributing to feelings of fragmentation, alienation, and a lack of genuine satisfaction in their professional lives. Political and ideological landscapes also exert immense pressure towards conformity, particularly in eras of heightened polarization. Nuance is often sacrificed at the altar of tribal allegiance. Individuals can feel intense pressure to adopt the entire platform of their chosen political group or ideological movement, suppressing personal doubts, disagreements, or complexities for fear of being ostracized, labeled as disloyal, or attacked by those on their own side. Critical thinking can be subordinated to groupthink, and complex social or political issues are frequently reduced to simplistic us versus them narratives that discourage independent analysis and genuine dialogue. Expressing ambiguity, seeking common ground with perceived opponents, or challenging the orthodoxies of one's own group can be met with suspicion, hostility, or accusations of betrayal. This climate makes authentic engagement with diverse perspectives incredibly difficult, often forcing individuals into ideological silos where conformity provides a comforting, albeit limiting, sense of safety and belonging. Even our systems of education, while designed with the intention of fostering knowledge and growth, can inadvertently promote conformity over authentic intellectual development. An overemphasis on standardized testing, adherence to rigid curricula, rote memorization, and classroom management techniques prioritizing order and compliance can sometimes overshadow the cultivation of critical inquiry, creativity, intellectual curiosity, and the courage to question assumptions or explore unconventional ideas. Students may learn, implicitly or explicitly, that success lies primarily in providing the correct answers, following instructions precisely, and fitting into the established academic structure, rather than in pursuing their own questions, challenging established knowledge, taking intellectual risks, or developing their unique talents and perspectives based on intrinsic motivation. Certain aspects of mass education can sometimes feel like preparation for compliance within larger bureaucratic systems, rather than empowerment for autonomous, authentic living. These various forces, the dynamics of social media, the logic of consumer capitalism, the norms of the modern workplace, the pressures of political tribalism, and certain features of educational systems do not operate in isolation. They intertwine and reinforce each other, creating a powerful and pervasive ecosystem that often favors homogeneity, predictability, performance, and compliance over individuality, spontaneity, integrity, and genuine self-expression. It is a system that frequently rewards fitting in and subtly or overtly penalizes standing out, making the path of authenticity feel like a constant uphill struggle against a relentless current. But what exactly is this authenticity that we seem to yearn for, this quality that feels increasingly elusive yet fundamentally important? It is a term often used loosely, sometimes romanticized as a state of pure, unfiltered self-expression, and sometimes dismissed as a self-indulgent or naive pursuit. To understand its deeper significance, we must look beyond these superficial interpretations. Philosophically, the concept of authenticity has rich and varied roots. Existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir emphasized authenticity as intrinsically linked to human freedom and the acceptance of responsibility for one's choices in a world without predetermined meaning or essence. To be authentic, in this view, is to courageously confront this freedom, to refuse bad faith, the act of self-deception by hiding behind social roles, external expectations, or deterministic excuses, and to actively create oneself through conscious choices and commitments. It involves embracing the anxiety that comes with this freedom and choosing to be the author of one's own life story. Søren Kierkegaard explored authenticity through the lens of subjective passion, inwardness, and the individual's relationship with the absolute. He famously criticized the crowd mentality and the dangers of losing oneself in collective identities or objective, detached modes of thinking. For Kierkegaard, authenticity required a passionate, personal commitment to one's deepest beliefs and values, often involving leaps of faith that transcended purely rational justification. It was about the intensity and sincerity of one's inner life and commitments. In the field of psychology, particularly within the humanistic tradition, figures like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow placed authenticity or congruence at the heart of psychological health and self-actualization. Rogers described congruence as the alignment between one's real self or organismic experiencing, one's self-concept, and one's ideal self. Greater congruence leads to openness, self-trust, psychological adjustment, and fulfilling relationships. Incongruence, the gap between these aspects of the self, results in defensiveness, anxiety, and maladaptment. Maslow saw authenticity as a key characteristic of self-actualized individuals who are more spontaneous, problem-centered, autonomous, and accepting of themselves and others. These perspectives converge on understanding authenticity not as a static trait or a fixed destination, but as a dynamic, ongoing process. It is a way of being that involves a commitment to cultivating self-awareness, paying attention to one's thoughts, feelings, values, motivations, and bodily sensations without excessive judgment. It requires integrity, striving to act in ways that are consistent with one's core values and beliefs, even when it is difficult or inconvenient. It necessitates courage, the willingness to be vulnerable, to express oneself honestly yet appropriately, to stand by one's convictions. and to face potential disapproval or misunderstanding for not conforming. It also involves self-acceptance, acknowledging and integrating the complexities, contradictions, imperfections, and ongoing evolution of the self, rather than striving for an unattainable ideal of flawless consistency or adhering rigidly to a fixed self-image. Authenticity, understood in this richer sense, is not about rejecting all social norms or conventions. Nor is it about impulsive or unfiltered self-disclosure without regard for context or impact. It is about conscious choice and alignment. It involves understanding the various roles we play in social life, perhaps acknowledging the insights of sociologists like Irving Goffman on the dramaturgy of social interaction, but striving to choose those roles consciously, to perform them with sincerity, and to ensure they do not fundamentally contradict or obscure our core values and sense of self. It is the difference between strategically adapting to a social situation with awareness and integrity versus losing oneself entirely in the performance, driven solely by fear, insecurity, or the insatiable desire for external approval. This deeper understanding immediately highlights a crucial contemporary paradox. The very pursuit of authenticity can itself become co-opted and transformed into another form of conformity. We live in a culture that actively markets authenticity. Influencers build followings by performing vulnerability and keeping it real. Brands adopt authentic storytelling and messaging to foster consumer trust and loyalty. Self-help industries offer countless workshops, books, and programs promising to help individuals find their true self or live their most authentic life. When being authentic becomes another trend, another set of prescribed behaviors and aesthetics to emulate, another performance to master, it risks being hollowed out, losing its intrinsic meaning and becoming just another mask. The pressure to appear authentic can become just as constraining and anxiety-provoking as the pressure to conform to other societal ideals. Perhaps genuine authenticity, then, is less about achieving a particular outward appearance or state of realness, and more about the quality of the inner process, the ongoing, often quiet, sometimes messy, commitment to self-awareness, value clarification, and striving for integrity in one's choices and actions, regardless of external validation. And it might be found more in the private struggles and courageous decisions made when no one is watching than in public declarations or performances of authenticity. Maybe the most authentic stance involves acknowledging the inherent complexities and even the performative aspects of social life, but continually striving for sincerity, congruence, and ethical responsibility within that context. Why, then, should we undertake this challenging, potentially paradoxical, and often counter-cultural quest for greater authenticity? What are the tangible benefits and profound implications of resisting the powerful currents of conformity and cultivating a life lived with greater genuineness? The positive consequences ripple through nearly every dimension of our existence. First and foremost, the connection between authenticity and mental and emotional well-being is undeniable. Constantly monitoring oneself, suppressing genuine feelings and needs, maintaining a facade to please others, or living in conflict with one's core values exacts a significant psychological toll. This chronic incongruence is a major source of stress, anxiety, depression, burnout, addiction, and a pervasive sense of emptiness or meaninglessness. It drains our vital energy and leaves us feeling alienated from ourselves. Conversely, living more authentically, striving for alignment between our inner experience and our outward actions, fosters a sense of wholeness, integrity, and psychological resilience. It reduces internal conflict, frees up mental energy previously spent on self-monitoring and impression management, and promotes self-acceptance. A robust body of research links authenticity to higher levels of self-esteem, greater life satisfaction, increased positive emotions, reduced negative affect, enhanced coping abilities, and overall improved mental health. When we act from a place of inner alignment, we build self-trust and a more stable, grounded sense of identity, which are crucial resources for navigating life's inevitable challenges. Authenticity is also fundamental to building deep, meaningful, and truly intimate relationships. Connections formed around false personas or heavily curated images are inherently fragile and ultimately unsatisfying. True intimacy requires vulnerability, the courage to allow ourselves to be seen, known, and understood at a deeper level, including our imperfections, struggles, and unique perspectives. When we dare to be authentic in our interactions, we invite others to connect with our real selves, creating the possibility for relationships built on mutual trust, genuine understanding, reciprocal empathy, and unconditional positive regard. While authenticity carries the risk of rejection or misunderstanding, some people may not resonate with or accept our genuine selves. The connections we do form on this basis are invariably stronger, more supportive, more resilient, and ultimately more fulfilling than those predicated on pretense. It allows for relating human to human, heart to heart, rather than mask to mask. Furthermore, authenticity serves as a powerful catalyst for creativity, originality, and innovation. Conformity, by its very nature, encourages adherence to established norms, imitation of successful models, and avoidance of risk, often leading to incremental improvements at best or stagnation and mediocrity at worst. True creativity, however, often involves challenging assumptions, questioning the status quo, exploring unconventional ideas, trusting one's intuition, and expressing a unique perspective or vision that deviates from the mainstream. Authentic individuals are generally more attuned to their inner world, more willing to take creative risks, more intrinsically motivated, and therefore more likely to produce work that is original, impactful, personally meaningful, and potentially transformative. Whether in the arts, sciences, technology, entrepreneurship, education, or social change movements, significant breakthroughs often spring from those who possess the courage to deviate from established paradigms and follow their own authentic insights and passions. A culture that genuinely values and fosters authenticity is likely to be more dynamic, innovative, adaptable, and capable of generating novel solutions to complex challenges. On a broader societal and political level, authenticity plays a crucial role in fostering social justice, ethical conduct, and positive social change. Throughout history, progress towards greater freedom, equality, and human dignity has often depended on individuals and groups who dared to challenge unjust systems, speak truth to power, even at great personal risk, and advocate for alternative ways of living and organizing society based on their deeply held principles and an authentic perception of reality. Conformity, conversely, tends to preserve existing power structures and social norms, even when those structures and norms are oppressive, inequitable, or harmful. Authentic dissent, ethical courage, critical consciousness, and the willingness to stand up for one's values are essential ingredients for holding institutions accountable, challenging injustice, promoting democratic participation, fostering a more compassionate and ethical society, and driving necessary social evolution. A healthy society requires a diversity of authentic voices and perspectives, willing to engage in difficult but necessary conversations, and challenge prevailing narratives that perpetuate harm or limit human potential. Finally, and perhaps most fundamentally, the pursuit of authenticity is intrinsically linked to the possibility of living a deeply meaningful and fulfilling life. External markers of success, such as wealth, status, power, or popularity, often prove ultimately hollow and unsatisfying if they are achieved at the cost of one's integrity, by sacrificing one's core values, or by suppressing one's true passions and sense of purpose. A genuine sense of meaning tends to arise from living in alignment with our deepest values, engaging in activities that genuinely energize and inspire us, contributing to something larger than ourselves in a way that feels personally significant, cultivating relationships characterized by mutual respect and genuine connection, and developing a coherent narrative for our lives that resonates with our core sense of self. Authenticity empowers us to define success and well-being on our own terms, rather than blindly adopting definitions handed down by society or external authorities. It enables us to make conscious choices about how we invest our precious time, energy, and attention, and to craft a life story that feels genuinely ours, a life we can look back on with a sense of integrity, purpose, and peace, knowing we lived as truly and fully as we could, even amidst the inevitable challenges and imperfections. Given these profound benefits and high stakes, how can we actively cultivate greater authenticity in our daily lives, consciously pushing back against the pervasive pressures to conform and perform? It is not typically about a single dramatic epiphany or a sudden transformation, but rather about committing to a set of ongoing practices and conscious choices that foster self-awareness, courage, integrity, and compassionate self-expression. Prioritizing regular self-reflection is paramount. This means intentionally carving out time and space in our busy lives to disconnect from the constant barrage of external stimuli, demands, and opinions, and to turn our attention inward. Practices like journaling, perhaps exploring specific prompts about values, feelings, fears, hopes, and experiences, meditation or mindfulness exercises, spending quiet, contemplative time in nature, engaging in creative expression, like painting, writing, or music, or working with a supportive therapist, counselor, or coach, can all facilitate this crucial process of inner listening and self-discovery. Getting clearer about our core values, the fundamental principles that guide our sense of right and wrong, meaning, purpose, and priorities, is essential. When we know what truly matters most to us, we have an internal compass to navigate complex choices and resist pressures that pull us away from our integrity. Practicing mindfulness consistently is another powerful tool. Mindfulness involves paying deliberate, non-judgmental attention to our present moment experience, thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, urges, and the surrounding environment. This practice helps us become more aware of our habitual patterns of thinking and reacting. Recognize our genuine feelings and needs as they arise, often beneath layers of conditioning or self-criticism, and develop a greater capacity for self-acceptance. By observing our inner landscape with curiosity and kindness, we can begin to distinguish our authentic responses from automatic reactions driven by fear, insecurity, or the desire to please others. Defining and defending healthy boundaries is absolutely critical for protecting our authenticity and well-being. This involves learning to identify our limits, communicate them clearly and respectfully, and say no to requests, commitments, demands, or expectations that feel draining, overwhelming, misaligned with our values, or violate our sense of integrity. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect and self-preservation. It clarifies our responsibilities to ourselves and others, prevents resentment from building, and ensures that we do not lose ourselves in trying to meet everyone else's needs or expectations at the expense of our own. This often requires courage, assertiveness, and a willingness to tolerate potential discomfort or disapproval from others. Embracing vulnerability, counterintuitive as it may seem, in a culture that often prizes strength and invincibility, lies at the very heart of authentic living and connection. Vulnerability does not mean emotional incontinence or indiscriminate oversharing. Rather, it means having the courage to show up be seen, and be honest about our experiences, even when we cannot control the outcome. This involves acknowledging our imperfections and limitations, admitting when we have made mistakes or do not have all the answers, asking for help when we need it, sharing our genuine feelings and struggles appropriately with trusted individuals, and being willing to take emotional risks in the service of connection and growth. Vulnerability dismantles the exhausting facade of perfection and allows for genuine empathy, trust, and intimacy to flourish. Engaging critically and consciously with media and the surrounding culture is also vital. We need to move beyond passive consumption and actively question the messages, narratives, values, and ideals being presented to us through advertising, social media, news outlets, entertainment, and political discourse. Whose interests do these messages serve? Do they align with our own values and aspirations? Developing critical media literacy helps us recognize manipulation, resist consumerist pressures that equate happiness with acquisition, challenge harmful stereotypes, and make more conscious choices about the information, influences, and cultural products we allow into our minds and lives. Seeking out diverse perspectives that challenge our assumptions and broaden our understanding is also crucial. Cultivating supportive and authentic relationships is essential nourishment for the journey. Surround yourself with people who see you, accept you, appreciate your unique qualities, support your growth, challenge you constructively, and encourage you to be your genuine self. The fear of isolation or rejection is a primary driver of conformity. Finding a tribe, whether friends, family members, mentors, or community groups, where you feel safe, understood, respected, and valued for who you truly are, provides crucial support, encouragement, perspective, and a sense of belonging that does not require sacrificing your identity or integrity. True belonging fosters authenticity. Conformity often undermines it. Practicing courage in small, manageable steps is key to building momentum. Authenticity often requires acting against the grain of social pressure or our own ingrained fears, which can feel daunting. Start small. Voice a differing opinion respectfully in a low-stakes conversation. Wear an item of clothing that expresses your personal style, even if it feels slightly unconventional. Pursue a hobby or interest that genuinely excites you, regardless of its perceived status or utility. Share a vulnerable feeling with a trusted friend. Set a small boundary and stick to it. Each small act of courage builds self-efficacy, reinforces your commitment to authenticity, and makes larger acts of courage feel more accessible over time. Allowing for experimentation, growth, and evolution is also important. The self is not a static, fixed entity to be discovered once and for all. Authenticity involves embracing the reality that we are constantly learning, changing, and evolving throughout our lives. Be open to exploring new interests, trying on different roles or perspectives, stepping outside your comfort zone, learning new skills, traveling to unfamiliar places, and revising your beliefs and values based on new experiences, insights, and reflections. This prevents us from becoming rigidly attached to outdated self-concepts and allows our authentic expression to remain fluid, dynamic, and responsive to our ongoing journey of growth. However, it is crucial to approach this pursuit with realistic expectations and a keen awareness of the inherent complexities, challenges, and potential pitfalls. The path towards greater authenticity is rarely smooth or straightforward. We must acknowledge the real social risks involved. Choosing nonconformity or expressing unpopular views can lead to negative consequences, including judgment, criticism, misunderstanding, social exclusion, strained relationships, or even tangible setbacks in one's career or community standing. Navigating these risks requires wisdom, discernment, courage, and sometimes finding skillful compromises that maintain core integrity without causing unnecessary harm or self-sabotage. It is often a delicate balancing act. Internal conflict is also an inherent part of the process. Our own desires, values, beliefs, fears, and different aspects of our personality can often be contradictory or pull us in different directions. Authenticity involves acknowledging, exploring, and learning to integrate these internal tensions with self-compassion and patience, rather than striving for an unrealistic ideal of perfect consistency or suppressing inconvenient truths about ourselves. It requires embracing our own complexity and paradox. Crucially, any meaningful conversation about authenticity must grapple honestly with the issue of privilege and systemic inequality. The freedom, safety, and resources required to express one's authentic self are not equally distributed in our society. For individuals belonging to marginalized or oppressed groups who routinely face systemic discrimination, prejudice, violence, or economic instability based on their race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, class, disability, religion, or other identity markers, conformity can often be a necessary and understandable strategy for survival, safety, basic acceptance, or navigating hostile environments. Expressing authenticity in such contexts might carry significantly higher risks and consequences. Therefore, simplistic or universalizing calls to just be yourself can be insensitive, naive, or even harmful if they fail to acknowledge these deeply ingrained power dynamics and systemic barriers. What constitutes authentic expression and the degree of safety with which it can be pursued looks vastly different depending on one's social location, cultural context, and the specific power structures at play. We must approach this topic with humility, sensitivity, and a commitment to understanding diverse experiences, avoiding judgment of others' choices without appreciating their unique circumstances, constraints, and resilience. Finally, it is imperative to draw a clear distinction between genuine authenticity and behavior that is merely unfiltered, impulsive, inconsiderate, entitled, or harmful. Authenticity should never be used as a justification for cruelty, irresponsibility, violating others' boundaries, or disregarding the impact of one's words and actions. True authenticity, arguably, must be integrated with empathy, ethical consideration, social awareness, emotional intelligence, and a sense of responsibility towards others and the community. It is about striving to be true to one's best self, which inherently includes recognizing our interconnectedness, honoring the dignity of others, and striving to act with kindness, respect, and integrity in our relationships and interactions. It requires self-awareness not only of our inner states, but also of our place within a larger social fabric and our impact on the world around us. In conclusion, the dynamic tension between the powerful pressures of conformity and the deep human yearning for authenticity lies at the very heart of the modern experience. The forces urging us towards fitting in, performing prescribed roles, curating acceptable images, and homogenizing our thoughts and desires are undeniably strong, amplified by our technological landscape, consumer culture, and complex social structures. Yet, the innate human desire for genuineness, for a life lived with integrity, meaning, purpose, vulnerability, and deep connection, remains a potent and enduring counterforce, a quiet insistence from the core of our being. Authenticity, understood not as a fixed destination but as a dynamic, ongoing process of cultivating self-awareness, aligning with core values, exercising courage, embracing vulnerability wisely, and expressing oneself responsibly, offers a compelling and ultimately rewarding path toward greater individual well-being, more meaningful relationships, enhanced creativity, a stronger sense of purpose, and potentially a more just, compassionate, and vibrant society. This journey demands ongoing effort, critical reflection, conscious choices, and the courage to prioritize inner alignment over external approval, integrity over expediency, and genuine connection over superficial acceptance. It requires acknowledging the complexities, navigating the risks, understanding the role of privilege, and integrating self-expression with empathy and ethical responsibility. The path is rarely simple, often fraught with challenges, setbacks, and internal conflicts, but it holds the profound promise of reclaiming our unique humanity, our agency, and our capacity for deep fulfillment in an increasingly standardized and often alienating world. It is ultimately about striving to become the conscious author of our own lives, writing our own unique narrative with honesty, courage, passion, and integrity, rather than simply reciting lines from a script handed to us by external forces. As we navigate this complex age, perhaps the most vital and authentic act we can undertake is to keep asking the essential questions. Who am I beneath the layers of roles and expectations? What truly matters to me at the deepest level? And how can I live in greater alignment with that truth, day by day, choice by choice? What small, courageous step can you take today, this week, towards honoring your own authentic voice and experience? Thank you for joining me in this exploration today. I hope it has provided some valuable perspectives and perhaps sparked meaningful reflection for your own journey. Until next time, take good care of yourselves, be patient and compassionate with your own process, and continue the vital work of becoming more fully and genuinely who you are. Thanks for watching.